Good day, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. That should be the worst of it today, no more pain. I'm Leah, this is Pete. I'm from Ventura, California. I'm in IT strategy and business operations on the IT architecture, planning, and innovation team. Lots of letters.
Yeah, quite the mouthful. So good day, team. I'm Pete Lindsey, enterprise architect in IT. I live in Boston, so part of Team Anywhere, which is great, so I can live in Boston and still be part of the global team. Same team as Leah. We're really glad you're here. We were actually nervous at one point. We thought, gosh, I hope the room is not really full. But then we thought, wouldn't it be worse if it was empty? So really awesome to have you. Let's kick off.
All right. We have a four-part agenda today. We have our brief introduction. We'll talk a little bit about Atlassian IT, head through our journey with SaaS management, and then go through some lessons learned.
Okay, so we're going to anchor in this quote. Many of you probably know Dom Price. He's a work futurist at Atlassian, and we think it provides really elegant perspective for our talk. So SaaS is less of a technical decision and much more about business value, access to innovation, and delighting your end user. The reason we think this is really important to think about, and it sets the right mindset. So this is about SaaS, but it also is relevant for SaaS management. So 3 years ago, neither of us really thought about SaaS management. It wasn't on our radar. But now it's actually a critical business capability for modern IT. So we recommend this mindset as you start your own journey. So let's try to get a show of hands. We're curious about some data. In the audience, how many of you have about more than 10 SaaS applications at your company? Okay, so most of the room. What about more than 100? Keep your hands up. More than 500? All right, so a lot of applications. It is absolutely exploding, as I'm sure many of you have realized. Keep your hands up, or put your hands up if every one of those is secure. You're not paying for subscriptions you don't need. You know who owns them? Right, no hands. So how many does Atlassian IT have?
Quite a few. Thanks for the segue, Pete.
No worries.
So we're going to jump into Atlassian IT. Our vision is powering Atlassian and IT towards the future of modern work. We take place with Global Team Anywhere. You can work wherever you're legally able to, and about 1/3 of our applications are managed by IT right now. We have over 600 applications here. The rest are shadow IT, owned by the business or our friends in engineering. It accounts for about 25% of our budget right now, so it's kind of a big deal. We do take rationalization steps, but as soon as we take one step backwards and decommission something, it seems like our partners are bringing on 2 or 3 applications to replace it. So, as Pete said, it's become a critical capability as we're looking at in IT right now, and it's really become a core practice for us.
We have a mindset as well at Atlassian that we actually love shadow IT. Who in the audience loves shadow IT? Okay. It can sound so sinister. We actually don't like the term sometimes, but it can be really healthy in unlocking business value. So everybody should be empowered in your company to innovate, not just IT, right? So if you enable shadow IT to occur in the right ways, you're going to see a whole bunch of innovation pop up that you never even imagined. The other thing, it really highlights some blind spots. So IT often thinks we've got coverage, we're doing everything really well, but shadow IT really sort of surfaces where the business has got some gaps with the technology we're providing. So just look at that as an opportunity to help improve the business. And make it okay, bring it out of the shadows. This icon is play as a team. It's one of the Atlassian core values. And if you really embrace shadow IT, work together with them, you're going to increase the value overall to the company. You all work for one company, so play as a team.
Yeah, and if you were in Jenna's session before with Molly Hellerman, you heard that there are some niche apps out there that are so specialized and not really on IT's radar. So let's empower the business to go ahead and purchase those, and once it reaches the level of requiring IT management, then we can talk. But let's ensure that they're governed correctly beforehand.
I'll leave with one last point. We talk about this later on, but if you consider shadow IT as a first-class citizen when you're building your SaaS management practice, that's the mindset to keep. Like, don't exclude them, keep them in scope.
All right, on to part 3 of our phase here, our journey. Let's go ahead and dig in. So in 2019, our CIO asked us a very simple question. What is our SaaS portfolio? We thought we were ready to answer it. We onboarded a SaaS management platform. It was all the rage, and we commenced our discovery phase. We were ready. We're like, all right, let's go team, we got it. Well, as we entered discovery, we realized that instead of biting into a caramel-covered apple, we bit into a caramel-covered onion, and there were so many layers, it tasted disgusting, and we kind of started crying.
And that became our project name, the SaaS Onion. So again, what is our SaaS portfolio? That was our founding question, and then the tears started. So it led to more layers, many more layers. What is our risk? What is our compliance? What is our spend? What is our SLAs? Like, do we actually know what's going on in our environment? So when we start asking these questions, this is when the light bulb moment went off. We needed to staff a practice. And we thought, like, Atlassian IT didn't have a traditional software asset management practice because most of our environment's in the cloud. But this is the point that we thought we've actually got to fund this, and we've got to put people behind it and tooling that's going to make us do this really well.
Yeah, and we knew that we didn't want to get in the way of people bringing on applications. So how could we ensure Atlassian security while still enabling our team to move forward and get their work done too? All right, so let's break our journey into 3 phases: Scrappy, Get Shit Done, and Present Day. We'll provide some objectives, show some examples, show the high-level architecture, and then also show some demos. The goal is that you're going to walk away from this with the confidence to start your own SaaS management journey.
Right. Okay, so our Scrappy Objectives. First and foremost, you've got to discover what you got. Now, you could do this manually. You could put this on a spreadsheet, Confluence page. We actually chose to buy a tool, a SaaS management platform. There's a lot of really good ones in the market. There's some people in the expo, I think there's some people in the audience who represent one of the great tools out there. So put a tool in place, because you really can't fix what you can't see. Also, you'll see manage. We actually lead with business value. You won't see cost. Now, cost is important for everybody, but value is more important for Atlassian. It's all about right-sizing, right? So we want to know if the lights are on and no one's home in the application, turn the lights off, right? So we just want to make sure that we're getting the leverage we expect, the contracts are right sized, people are actually satisfied in using the tool.
Sure. Onto security. So risk and compliance is a big deal at Atlassian. It's woven into our everyday fabric. We know exactly what they're looking at, and it's not necessarily the small niche applications with little data in it. And so we knew, how can we connect with them for SaaS applications? And when we started asking the questions, they already knew the answers. So we know who to DM on Slack now whenever we have security questions, just to make sure that everything's covered. All right, on to the fun stuff. Let me show a couple of examples here. So this is our SaaS portfolio 1.0. What this is we wanted to bring together the business teams and the tech teams to say, let's have a conversation about what you're spending money on here. Up first, our objectives. Why are we talking about this, guys? We're a team here. We need our tech and our business teams to talk together. 2, ownership. Let's put names here and teams and ensure that folks know that you're responsible for this application. 3, IT managed applications. This is where IT raises their hand. This is on us. It's up to us to manage this application. 4, shadow IT. This is where the fun conversation started. This is when we started talking to the people team, saying, did you know you have 26 learning tools? Are they all secure? Like, what data is going in there? How are folks accessing it? How often are you deprovisioning people? Do you know what deprovision means? And so we wanted to start bringing that to the forefront and having a conversation about shadow IT and not making it scary.
Right, and there's a key principle at play here is visibility increases accountability. And that was in our mindset here. So we put this in Confluence deliberately so we could collaborate. So it looks like a report, but it's more than that. So when we post these, we actually get a lot of collaboration, a lot of participation, questions, really sort of poking into why we have certain things that we didn't actually know.
Yeah, and it enabled our tech teams to go to their business partners and say, what can we do to make your life easier? Instead of having your business teams managing applications, well, what if we downsized from 26 to 15, and then we can bring those into IT? Let's actually start those conversations. All right, this is our quarterly assessment. So think of this as a roll-up as all of the previous portfolio documents, but from a CIO level. So instead of looking exactly what the people team wants to do and the finance team, she can see the overall health of our portfolio. So up first, we have overall portfolio metrics. What came in, what's going out, how much are we spending on it? 2, portfolio evolution. When stuff's leaving, why is it leaving? How are we going to fix the stuff coming in? How are we going to avoid this issue in the future? 3, security and leverage. This is where we're going through of how are people signing in? What data's in there? Is it GDPR, SOC 2, right to be forgotten? All those fun questions. Then leverage is how often are people actually accessing it? Are the contracts that we have in place the right contracts? Do we need to work on adoption? Or let's just start exposing this information and start having discussions. And then 4, risks and mitigation. As I'm sure you can imagine, this of course brought up many questions. So how are we going to address them? What risk are we willing to accept, and how are we going to mitigate these issues?
Now, as an enterprise architect, I actually love these pages as well. So I get to have a rich conversation with teams about their portfolio. So not just about what they've got, but what they're actually thinking is coming next. So now it actually puts it on a page, it forces a different conversation versus just focused on what they've got.
Yeah, and one thing that we don't have on this page very clearly with your eyes here on the screen is we created a little bit of a competition between our teams, so that way the leaders and the people team and the finance team could all see how their team stacks up compared to the others. Are they doing their assessments? Are there apps behind SSO? How often are they deprovisioning, et cetera? Competition's a good thing in this space for us.
So great examples. Let's talk about how we built it. So we'll start here. There's a representative sample of some of our core business applications. I'm sure many of you are familiar. So that's our SaaS portfolio. We implemented a SaaS management platform to discover it. That hooks into your IAM solution, whether you've got Okta or one of those solutions, so you can really get a sense of what's going on in your environment. We also needed to bring in information, data from our procurement system, our financial system, to really discover spend. So there's spend that we know that's officially gone through the right process, and there's a spend that's gone through the expense process. So we bring that into our SaaS management platform, pretty scrappy, CSVs. The other part here that we decided pretty early, though, is we wanted to bring in more context. And so we wanted to bring in our application portfolio data. So enterprise architects, if any in the room, we have a pretty rich set of business capability libraries and just a whole sense of what's going on in our environment. And we wanted to be able to map that to the actual application. So we could say, why have we got 25 training applications? And really have that conversation around the business context. And of course, we brought that all into into our spreadsheet. And our goal is to get rid of this spreadsheet. And to bring visibility to IT leadership, that spreadsheet is summarized, synthesized, and put into Confluence.
Yeah, it's not exactly what we want to do is send our IT leaders to a spreadsheet that has hundreds of rows, let alone columns within the triple alphabet.
Yeah, a lot.
All right, so on to our next phase, get shit done. So this is where we are right now and where we're slowly emerging from. We're here, we're so ready to finish this phase and move on to the next one, but let's talk about what we're doing right now. We want to simplify our workflows. We want to make things easier for our users. Our user set has expanded from just folks in IT to now also talking to the business and bringing their data in as well. Align stakeholders. Now that we've dug into this journey, we have procurement asking us questions. They want to get more involved and be part of the process sooner. So how do we make that easier for everyone, from an IT leader to procurement to our finance team?
So we decided to take a step back at this point. So we took our scrappy architecture. Now we knew that we needed to get better at workflows, and we weren't using Jira Service Management in our workflows. So we knew that needed to be the foundation for doing our workflows better. But then we all thought, how do we align stakeholders?
Yeah, so dynamic forms, you all might know it from the ThinkTilt acquisition. So this enabled us to start asking direct questions of our user set and not having them find and figure out where they need to put answers in the G sheet. Instead, they can have drop-downs saying, what tier is this? Yes, you're a tier 0. Go ahead and answer the next question. And if they weren't, they don't have to do the form. It made things really simple for us and delighted our users. All right, so as I was just mentioning that form for tier 0 and tier 1 applications, we have this project called Application Resilience, Business Continuity, Disaster Recovery. Everyone ready to say it together?
Mouthful.
So what we did is, before, these questions were being asked on a Confluence page and everything was individual. We weren't looking across application and comparing them to each other or reviewing the overall risk. And then when we eventually got to reviewing the overall risk of them, Then you're trying to summarize data from a Confluence page, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. It's all in disparate areas. So with dynamic forms, we were able to put that information into Jira and have it all aligned for us so we can start racking and stacking as to where our issues are. This is where we ask like what the RTOs are, what the RPOs, if it aligns with our contracts, if it aligns with our risk, and if it does, great. If we have things that we need to fix, then let's go ahead and track that here as well. On the right-hand side for Confluence, you'll also see we started labeling out our different product groups. This is where we got into some more competition between our solution architects to show of who was getting their job done and who still had a lot of work to go. So that way their boss could say, hey, what's going on here? We have to get these done to satisfy risk and compliance, yet why haven't we looked at Workday yet?
Actually,
they did look at Workday.
Leah touches on an important part of Atlassian IT too that we should talk about. So each different tech team in IT has a solution architect, and that solution architect is responsible with the leader of that tech team for the portfolio. So now we've actually brought that visibility to the solution architect. They didn't have it before. And so we've often, when we asked them to go and check the RPO or the RTO of their applications, it was just a manual, crazy activity, and now it's all in one place and automated.
Yeah, we've started to marry up enterprise architecture, solution architecture, and SaaS management into one spot for them.
So let's talk about how we built this phase. So there's the diagram from earlier on. We needed additional context as well. So to enable those workflows that we were enabling with dynamic forms, we have a supplier risk management tool. It's actually built in Jira that is sort of triggers when we need to do an app resilience review. And so we wanted that context with the data of that review, the last time we did it, what the requirements are. Coming into our spreadsheet, we can have that full sort of 360-degree view of the health of that SaaS application. Now, our service level agreements actually kept in, that's a Compass logo. We actually have used an internal version of Compass for a couple of years, but that's where for each application we maintain the service level agreement, what the RPO is, what the RTO is. And we needed that context in as well, so we brought that into our spreadsheet to enable that sort of dynamic reporting that Leah showed. The key part here is then we onboarded more personas. So we were really thinking about the IT leadership persona when we were Scrappy, but we thought, how do we open this up? How do we democratize this so it's not just IT who's actually managing the SaaS portfolio, it's actually our business partners as well. And you'll see at the bottom, including Shadow IT. So I mentioned that at the start. Think about Shadow IT all the way through your journey. We've got only about 1/3 of our applications are managed by IT, so that other 2/3 could really benefit from some of this tooling as well. Don't forget about them.
Yeah, Pete. So you see the two bubbles at the top, supplier risk management and service level tier and agreements. So those are two separate instances right now. One's an internal tool, one's built on Jira Service Management. And supplier risk management is generally when the product's being onboarded, and then the service level tier agreement lives with the product. Well, some of the data in there overlaps, like for example, the tier level. And what we found when we started comparing the data here is the tiers weren't matching up. And so if anyone on the security team was looking at the supplier risk portal to see what tiers they need to query and pull up information on, they were getting a different answer than what the service owner was pulling up when they look in our internal tool. And so now we've brought that to the forefront and have started ensuring alignment between these two different systems. All right, present day. So we're getting here, and it feels good. We want to unify contextual data. I'm sure that if you're asking one question about a SaaS application, you might have 6 more. Before, we were going to 6 different places to find those answers. We have tons of internal tools built up. We are Atlassian, we like to build our own shit. And so instead of going there, let's bring that information to the forefront. That way the persona only needs to find it in one spot. And then 2, do more faster. How can we enable complex workflows? Instead of scheduling meetings, writing Confluence pages, then pulling that information together, how can we create workflows so people can do it asynchronously, and then we can have a check-in at the end if required?
So we took another step back, and we were thinking about this spreadsheet that was thousands and thousands of columns, and we thought, how do we eliminate it? And we looked back at our toolkit, and so we've got Jira Service Management, we have dynamic forms, and we started looking at Insight. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with Insight. It's an asset and configuration management feature or capability within Jira Service Management. And we had this light bulb moment. I forgot to do my little animation, that SaaS applications are assets as well. So we were thinking Insight was just a CMDB, and we're a modern IT, we didn't need a CMDB, but we thought Insight could actually be a Swiss Army knife. Insight could actually be the solution that we needed. So it also, and I'll touch on this in a moment, it opened our minds to thinking broader than this. So we've been very much focused on SaaS management, how to improve that capability, but now we've got this like really rich graph of data that we can use for other business capabilities in IT as well.
All right, for those not familiar with Insight, let me do a quick primer on it. I think most of us here might know about Jira Service Management, so it's pretty similar. You have projects, which are large buckets of information. You have issue types, which are high-level categories for that information. Issues, which are the actual discrete information that you need and that you're looking for. And then fields, which add contextual data about that information. Okay, so on to Insight. Schemas. They're just like projects. They're large buckets of information that you're trying to collate in some way.
Sorry.
Object types. Another area to do a high-level categorization for the data that you're trying to collect. Then objects, exactly the same as issues. I think you can see where I'm going here. Those are the actual information nugget that we're after. And then attributes. These are the contextual data, just like fields, that enriches that information. So let's walk through an example. We have applications at Atlassian is going to be called our schema. We want to understand what we have in stock. Object types. Hosted. Do we host it, or is it a SaaS object? So object type, excuse me. So you have SaaS, and then you have hosted. Objects, we have Trello, we have AWS, we have Confluence, we have Jira Service Management. Those are all different types of objects in here. And then attributes. Let's talk about when the contract started for each of those and when the contract's going to end. When do we need to start caring about dealing with this and our re-up and the negotiation with that vendor? So let's go through with Trello. Trello's coming up at the end of the month. That's an attribute. It's tagged to the Trello object. We know it's a SaaS hosted object, and it's in the applications of Atlassian schema. Pretty simple, right?
This is a good slide to take a photo of, because when we started our Insight journey, we couldn't get our mind around it. And this mapping was something we were familiar with, really just sort of made all the light bulbs go off.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how we're building the present day. This is a pretty easy build because it's just really one replacement. We're replacing this big, enormous spreadsheet with Insight. We finally think we can get out of the spreadsheet land. We're also replacing all of those integrations from CSVs to be more robust APIs. So we got to a point that we've proven that this is a need for us to have this tool chain that actually is robust because we start to rely on it. And so we want to get out of Scrappy and actually build proper integrations. So think about each of those data sources on the left-hand side. I wish they weren't grayed out. So whether it's supplier risk management, SLAs, each of those data sources is a schema in Insight. And so we're able to, we're building a data model based on Insight.
Yeah, and everyone at our company, you heard earlier that we're very open company, no bullshit. So everyone has access to this data. If you want to go in and find it, we don't have to provision you necessarily. You might have to get the key to know which one you're going to go look at, but then you can go in and see it, and you can say, I want to learn more about Trello, and then see all of your information. Instead of it being locked away in some third-party SaaS application, we're bringing the information right to our home base, which is built on the Atlassian platform. So we put all this together. I think you guys kind of feel what we're trying to do. We wanted to see if it was even possible. Are we looking at Insight the right way? Can Insight be this end-all be-all to manage SaaS for 600 plus applications? We partnered with a solutions engineer, Kathy, to walk through what this would look like, and we wanted to do a simple example of, let's just transfer a service. Let's say Pete's leaving the company. Oh, sorry, excuse me. We have a new employee coming in. Pete's going to transfer his service to someone else. And so instead of having 6 emails going back and forth or Slack messages, we can set up a workflow in Jira Service Management, and then the manager of that team can say yes, no, and have it be approved. So let's go ahead and hear from Kathy and walk through this story.
And as you watch the story, look carefully for where Insight is at play. Insight is the star of the show for us right now.
A quick example of our transfer ownership of a service. So here we've got different people responsible for different instances. We are going to help Jen out by giving these instances to another team member. So first we're going to select the team, and this next option is actually filtering down now to people within that team.
Inside.
So we'll go ahead and choose Max. We can add some details. So Max is taking over. And then what's happening on the back end is once this goes to the proper approval, we will transfer those instances over to Max, and then we'll also link a couple of requests over. Now, who's it going to for approval is actually the collaboration team rolls up to a department, and it's going to be that department manager. So while we're doing that, so here's the ticket. We've got the information, right? So we can see that those apps belong to Jennifer right now.
This is all inside.
And it's waiting on that
here.
approval. The approval here, we can see we selected collaboration, which is part of the workplace technology department. I also put that object here directly just for quick access, where you can also see that department manager is Alana. That's who you can see in there as the approver. I also surfaced up this information about the service that those instances roll up to. So you've got some information there, and then of course you've got the graph to be able to see that even more clearly, as well as start pulling up information from those related objects. But since it's sitting there with Alana, she probably got an email. I'm going to just have her approve this in the portal. So you can see that same ticket. We'll do that approval, and then, as I said, once the automation kicks off in the background, it's going to do a couple different things. So it will change this service owner from Jennifer over to Max, and then we're going to also raise those linked requests over. So let me refresh. And here you can see they are now for Max. So Max now owns those. And then these are the linked requests that I was mentioning. So one over to IT operations, demonstrating that cross-team collaboration. And then this is also a handover. So this is actually for Max now, right? So he will get an email. He's been assigned this. We're also giving him that information so he can start working with these people for that smoother transition. Now, as part of that, not only do we give him all that information we had on the first page, but we're also giving him a heads up on some open issues that he's got there, so we can see those links, and then also information about the contracts that are associated.
Cool. Good.
All right.
So this is a real problem we had to solve. So we have 600 applications and a lot of change occurring with people changing responsibilities. And if you imagine it, how do you know that you've actually got an owner for an application when they change their job? So now we've built this workflow that enables us to maintain confidence that we have an owner for that application. Now, this has been built very specifically from our context, and we've been thinking about how do we build this workflow so more in line with our people or HR systems. So when people officially change jobs, it will trigger not just other workflows of that occurring, but also make this automatically occur as well. So we're not having to chase them, it's just part of a human resource workflow.
Yeah, and before, now when Max comes online, he knows exactly what issues are open here. He knows what he should be aware of right away. He knows who his connection points are, who the solution architect is, which teams he's working with, and it's all pulled right in there for him via Insight. All right, so remember when I talked about application resiliency? Well, when we first created that with the forms, it was all manual. It was a pain in the butt to create 60 different line items, fill out partial data, and then send it over to our solution architects and the service owners to fill out. Well, now we're using Jira Service Management, automation, and Insight to automatically fill out all of those forms, and I think it's 2 clicks. And that way I can just say, I need to do work for Tier 0 and Tier 1 applications. Take it away, computer. And so let's go ahead and hear from Kathy about how we did this.
Okay, so we're going to do a application resiliency policy check for our tier 0 services. And we can ask additional information. What's happening in the background is the system's actually going to go look up all of the different instances that roll up to the application service tier 0. So if we check that out. So here's the request. And as you see, we've got our tier 0, which is linked to all of the various instances that roll up under that tier. And what we've done is surface that information on the ticket itself. So you can see there are the 4 services, and here are the instances that are associated. You notice I've got a comment down here on the bottom that also calls out each of these instances, just illustrating the fact that you could either surface up that information within a field on an instance, or you could certainly have it as a comment, maybe back to the requester, which would show up in the portal. All of that done through automation. We've also raised and linked individual reviews for those security reviews for each of the teams. So here you can see, instead of manually having to create this, the system's actually creating this app resilience request with a link to the assessment, has all the information for, in this case, the Bitbucket team to start to review and go ahead and close that out. So automating that whole process for us.
Yeah, and one thing, when I started asking these questions of how their application aligns with the contract, I was often asked, can you send me the latest contract, please? And so then I would go back into our contract system and dig it up. Well, now we can have that linked. And so whenever you're looking up Bitbucket, you can see exactly what that contract is and have all of the tiers laid out right away.
So we thought we'd give a preview into what's next. And you've heard some of this in the keynotes. We've got some new ingredients to cook with when we're cooking this SaaS onion.
Yep, so we have Atlassian Analytics coming online. It's now in the Atlassian platform, at least for us in the preview. It's really good. That way we can start creating dashboards for our leadership team. Instead of sending them to external to a Google Sheet or to a Confluence page with screenshots, I can now say, here's your SaaS portfolio dashboard, and have a nice setup for them. And then as they dig into the numbers, they can go and find more information linked right there because it's all in Atlassian. Then Atlassian Assist. We want to make it easier for the users and our stakeholders to get information out. So we're going to start using the new tooling coming on to answer some of those questions right away.
So we threw this slide together yesterday, in fact, after we saw the keynote, to see how it would evolve what we're working on present day. So Atlassian Analytics, we think it could change or replace our Confluence page and become like a more dynamic place for people to get the data they need or insights they need. And the second part is, how do we enable our staff, as Leah mentioned, to actually take actions? Like, if there's things that they can do through the channels they get support, how do we enable that to occur through this ecosystem? So when we started this project, I mentioned before, we were the SaaS onion, and that's been our focus. And as we built this tool chain, we started thinking it can do much more than just SaaS management. We've actually renamed our project from SaaS onion to be called ITxM, IT Anything Management. So we believe we're building a foundation right now that can actually enable other capabilities in IT, using a core data model or data graph with insight, and using JSM as our platform that underpins everything. So we've only started the journey, like obviously focused on SaaS management, but we believe we're building a foundation to connect and bring other data sources and enable other workflows in IT as well.
Yeah, we started bringing in our IT financial management here. We're linking in the same numbers from our financial management tool. We're bringing in our business process management. And that's why we're calling it ITxM, because now we have all of the various IT blank flavors in one spot, and it's all connected with Jira Service Management and Insight. All right, on to the last phase of our journey, lessons learned. We're going to leave you with a few lessons learned. We've been on this journey for about a year now. There's still a long ways to go, but here's what we've taken so far and we'd like to share with you. Visibility drives accountability. When things are in the shadows, you don't know it exists. So let's just bring it to the forefront. It's okay that you have shadow IT. I get it. I don't know marketing apps through and through. Go ahead and buy it, but let's ensure that it's in compliance with our risk team. Automate workflows. Let's make things easy for our users and create a delightful experience. I don't want them trying to look in 6 different places. So I'm going to automate the workflow and have a step-by-step process for them to deal with. Leverage context. As I mentioned before, one question generally leads to 6 more. So let's bring all those answers together at the forefront, and then if they need more information, we can always dig into it. The last one, continuously improve. We have to iterate. We're not gonna fix it first, so we're on like one, maybe? No,
maybe.
I don't
5,
know.
10.
Well, I think they were like 0.2, 0.3, 0.5, so we're gonna keep iterating. We wanna ensure that we're delighting our end users and making sure that we're talking with our stakeholders as well. What does procurement wanna see? It's very different than what our CIO wants to see. Thank you everyone so much. We really appreciate your time here. I hope you have a blast.
Thanks, team. Cheers.